Advance on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Survive and Advance is brought to you by the Future of Sports Medicine, Replenishing Care. You can find out more information by going to gruelingtruth.net and clicking on the banner at the top of our page. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my co-host. First up, we've got Indiana basketball legend, won the 1981 National Championship game where he carried the Hoosiers to the title over North Carolina. Help me welcome to the show, Steve Risley.
All right, now I got a question now. Is Lucas going from co-host to guest to co-host now?
No, he's just.
My duty's been cut in half.
You always bitch about everything. I'll tell you.
I thought he was a guest. I mean, our special guest back for day 2 is trying to weasel in on my show.
If you want, I'll just hang up on him now. I mean, I don't want to hurt your.
Dude, I can close the. Mike Pence is from Indiana. I can have Donald close the border wall between Canada and the United States real quick.
Donald.
My son went to school with Mike Pence's daughters.
Oh,
okay.
So
I got a little connection.
Lots of Canadian discrimination.
Well, and of course we've got our contributor, Lukas Weese.
Thank you.
Lucas.
How you doing, guys? Great to be on the show again. I must have made a positive impression yesterday to be back on the show for 2 consecutive days. It's a real honor.
Yeah, well, you'll probably never be allowed back on again after this because Steve gets
really
jealous.
especially with this opinion I'm about to unleash on you guys. So.
Actually, Steve,
hey, let me tell you guys, I'm not good enough to not be protecting my turf. Okay, I am not anybody's goat. Okay, so I have to vehemently defend my turf whenever I feel I have to because I suck at this.
All right, yeah,
okay.
I was waiting for Lucas to disagree with you sucking at this, but he didn't.
I know. Nobody disagreed. Come on, Steve.
How can I disagree with a national champion? I mean, how can I disagree with a national champion?
I agree.
I agree. All right, guys.
Hey, just a couple quick things. Tigers in action today, playing out in Washington, D.C. for all the golfers out there that care. He's gearing up now for the British Open. And the Lakers are on the prowl. They're negotiating with San Antonio right now to acquire the rights to Kawhi. What was the guy's last name? Kawhi. I had it written down somewhere.
Leonard.
Kawhi Leonard. And
Kawhi Leonard, yeah.
Kawhi Leonard. Part of the stipulation was for LeBron to consider the Lakers was there had to be another top-level player coming to the organization as well. It looks like the Lakers are trying to make that move. To acquire the second, they have to do it here real quickly before July to tomorrow because the free agent deadline, I guess, starts tomorrow. And so you may see something today with them acquiring the rights to him. And then LeBron has stipulated that if he does choose to exercise his right to leave, he wants to have everything done a week from yesterday by the 4th of July. He wants to announce his new team and move on and go on and enjoy his summer. And again, it is pretty well confirmed he has bought a second home in Los Angeles, and some of his kids are investigating enrolling in schools out here. So,
and expect another Players Tribune article with LeBron James leads.
Another what?
Another Players Tribune article from LeBron James. Another long essay.
So that's just what's going on that. Now, that being said, let's get on. Well, somebody else has something we want to add to that, but I thought that was pretty all-encompassing.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. You were awesome, Steve. I mean, I've never really heard anybody explain something as well as you just did. All right.
I speak in normal person's terms.
Except for when you make up words, and I'm sure you'll make up some today. The topic today is who was the greatest coach in NFL history? We narrowed it down to 2. I think that there's actually people that belong on this before Lombardi. I'll give you that right now. With the choices we have are Vince Lombardi or we have Bill Belichick. Lucas, I'll let you state your case first.
Well, I gave you a hint yesterday. I'm going to go with Vince Lombardi. Just to give you a recap of his stats. He only coached for 10 years in football. He coached, of course, with the Green Bay Packers and then with the Washington Redskins. Unfortunately, his career was shortened because he was diagnosed with cancer. Because I think if he had gone on for more years, I think he would have definitely racked up more wins on his stat sheet. But nonetheless, his regular season record was 96, 34, and 6, 9-1 playoff record. He has 5 championships, and of course, won the first 2 Super Bowls. Now, in 10 years, he got 96 wins. Bill Belichick only got 52 wins. So an incredible pace that Vince Lombardi set. And before I get into more of the case, I do have respect for both coaches. I think they're both great coaches in their own right. And it's sometimes unfair to compare coaches from different eras because the game has changed so much from the time Vince Lombardi coached to the time that Bill Belichick coached. But I like Lombardi for a couple of reasons. Number one is I think that, you got a guy in Lombardi that took a Packers team that was 110-1 the year before he arrived and immediately made mediocrity unacceptable. He really changed the culture of that locker room. Remember the quote, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing? Well, that was Vince Lombardi. His team was comprised of players who had day jobs selling insurance or shoes just to pay the bills, to make ends meet. So he really took a team of players that were, some people consider to be scrubs and molded them into football players. And as I said earlier, he got 5 championships out of them in the 60s era, the first 2 Super Bowls, including that dramatic Ice Bowl game in the NFC Championship game against the Dallas Cowboys. And finally, before I wrap up here, Lombardi was one of the first coaches to really integrate players of all races on his team. So if someone had a problem with it or said something derogatory, he'd be kicked off the team. So he really promoted a sense of acceptance and really made a real impact in the game. It's why there's the Vince Lombardi trophy now. It's why the Super Bowl trophy is named after him. His impact still lasts today. I got Vince Lombardi better than Belichick.
All right, so let's just start off with where you're completely wrong. I mean, when you make a statement like winning isn't everything, it's the only thing, and saying that is attributed to Vince Lombardi is just wrong. I mean,
it's
that
Red
is
Saunders.
Actually attribited. No,
Red Saunders.
Yeah, Red Sanders. He was a UCLA football coach, also coached at Cal Sally San Luis Obispo. That's hard to say. Yeah, I mean, we'll go ahead, Steve. You can go ahead and tack on here since you guys are kind of going to try to gangbang me here.
Well,
I did it.
I just want to say, and where do you guys be rating me at the beginning of the show? The measure of who we are is what we do with what we have. All right. Now, I think I far exceed you two in that area.
I don't
Vince
know what
Lombardi.
you just said, but okay.
That is one of his quotes.
Okay.
I started off looking at it from a perspective of, I thought, I got to give the nod to Belichick. But then I started doing a little bit of research, and I'm going to flip on this and go, I think in the era and the equipment when I say equipment, I mean everything available to the coach at the time, Lombardi was probably a greater innovator. And I understand you're going to say innovator. Belichick's the greatest innovator in terms of schemes, offensive, defensive, especially on the defensive side of the ball. No doubt about that. But the integration of players, the motivation of players, and he was one of the first coaches ever to use game film to study his opponents and to study his own practices. I think a lot of what Belichick uses today is what Lombardi innovated.
Wait a second. Can you tell me, just real quick, tell me the innovations that Lombardi brought to the game.
Integration.
Huh?
Yeah. He brought integration. That's an incredible innovation. That's the biggest innovation in sports. He brought integration into sports. And he took the common man and he turned them in front, as Lucas said, he took the common man and turned them into athletes, as opposed to Belichick inherits great athletes to work with.
Really?
I mean, he totally changed the concept of the game.
So what was his
and
innovation?
Belichick has perfected that and improved upon that and done a masterful job as much as anybody has.
Please give me his innovations real quick. You didn't give me. Would you say integration?
That is an innovation.
What's integration of what?
The power sweep, the running game.
And the power sweep was basically an offshoot of a full house offense run back in the 1940s. I mean, give me something that was innovative that he did.
He perfected it.
He perfected it. Well, you know what? Bill Belichick's perfected everything. And the thing is this, it's hard to be innovative when something's been done.
Including cheating.
For 100 years.
He has perfected cheating.
When did he cheat?
Exactly.
See, this is what I don't like. You're full of crap right now because this is the thing. You're trying to make an argument of why Lombardi is a better coach. And within 5 minutes, you're screaming, cheating, even though he's never cheated. It's never been proven he cheated. Give me where he cheated.
Mike.
Give me where he cheated.
He had you know what? Okay. It's alleged, hasn't been proven, you're right. But he definitely, in my opinion, had a hand or at least had knowledge of Spygate and
what
Deflategate.
What is Spygate? Explain Spygate to me.
Spygate was where the Patriots would, coaching staff would then spy on other teams.
Who did they spy on?
Get information. The Jets, the New York Jets.
Really? Now, it doesn't bother you that the Jets were busted for that, doing it to the Patriots a few years before. The other thing is this. Spygate with the Jets was, in the first quarter, they had set a cameraman up in a spot where they weren't allowed to. By the end of the first quarter, the tapes were destroyed. How does that have to do with winning 5 championships?
Because you get an unfair advantage.
How did he get? He didn't get an unfair advantage. How did he get an unfair advantage? They took the tapes and destroyed them before they could ever be used.
But even the thought of getting tapes, Mike.
Really? The thought of cheating is...
If there wasn't an advantage, to gain, they wouldn't have even done that. Then why would they do that?
This is the thing. It was not illegal to do that either. There was nothing in NFL
But there's a difference between something being illegal and unethical.
Okay, so if you go back to Vince Lombardi in 1962, a Detroit Lion player had left his playbook in a locker room. Vince Lombardi found it, and Vince Lombardi didn't give it back. What's worse?
Didn't steal it. Didn't
steal it. So if you take something that's not yours, you're not stealing. So if Ross finds a gold watch when he's 11, and he finds it on the ground and he just brings it home, you're going to let him keep it?
Different scenario.
How's it different? That's finding something and keeping it. If you find something that is not yours and you keep it and you don't try to find the rightful owner, you're stealing. That's why you wouldn't let him keep it. I don't know how that's different, though.
I think I agree with Steve here. I think it's different. Yeah, like you're comparing apples.
You still have not given me where he cheated to win a championship. I mean, Spygate, what's that? I mean, you had the Super Bowl 36 thing where he supposedly filmed stuff. There was no proof there. I mean, this is stuff that the NFL made up to try to bring him down, just like Deflategate.
And this is coming out of the mouth of the same man yesterday who ripped the NFL a new butthole because they cover up and bury everything and hide everything and make fake news.
What I'm saying is this.
So they hid everything.
They made
the NFL just says, look, we don't need the Patriots.
The NFL made it up.
We don't need the Patriots.
Just like they made up.
The NFL made it up.
Just like they made up.
They made up.
Come on.
We're way off base here.
No, we're not. And, I mean, maybe you got to do some research into Spygate and into the Super Bowl 36 crap instead of just going by what the false narrative that was put on the front page was. You know, it's how it always is. Somebody gets accused of something, it gets on. It's just true. I mean, there's nothing you can show me that showed me he cheated. I mean, every NFL team in the world
irregardless
cheated.
of not, that's not relevant.
He had to have some involvement.
Yeah, he had to have
not
some
relevant
involvement
really to
in
the argument. Whether he did or not is not relevant. Okay.
Well, it is relevant because it's one of the first things you brought up, Steve. When
right,
you're trying
because
to prove Lombardi
it was an insightful comment. All right, let's get back to the debate about the coach and get off this case. All right, you're right. We should have brought it up. I admit it was a cheap shot. I'll take my lumps on that one. Go ahead. So nothing's been proven, although it's been implied greatly time and time again. Basically, smoke usually leads to fire, but it's not been proven that that's the case.
Sure it does.
And O.J. Simpson is innocent.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
He is innocent, man.
Thing. I think it's a real problem here that when we're talking about Bill Belichick possibly spying on a team, that we're going to equate that to O.J. Simpson murdering his ex-wife.
That's like finding a watch in a playbook.
It's
both
the
irrelevant.
same damn thing. What is the difference? Actually, finding the watch and not giving it back is worse than not giving the playbook back. And I can tell you this, I coach football. If I find the playbook, I ain't giving it back. You should have held on to that damn thing.
Okay.
Now, Mike, I'm going to give you a
I go down the list here. Hang on now. I found just in my research and as quickly as I could get it done, Lombardi has at least 19 of his former players in the Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
How many does Belichick have?
All right, so we're going to compare somebody who most of the guys that have played.
Well, that's the whole purpose of the whole show is to compare.
Yeah, but you can't compare that because this is the point, Steve. This is the point.
Why can't you compare that?
Bobby Knight was a great coach is because you can only bring up one or two great players he had. Bill Belichick finds guys in his system and he wins. The NFL had 12 teams in it in the early 60s when Lombardi started winning. All of those guys had jobs in the offseason. Big freaking whoop. Because this is the thing. Every year, Bill Belichick has to overturn anywhere from 25% to 33% of his offense or of his roster. When you look at Vince Lombardi had 12 Hall of Famers. He never lost any of those guys to anybody. He had them. He didn't have to fight to get them. He didn't have to bring other players in. Bill Belichick takes guys that people think are done, brings them in, and they have a great year like Randy Moss did. When you look at this, there aren't that many Hall of Famers there. There'll be one or two, maybe three. And he won, or so far, he has been a part of winning 5 Super Bowls, going to 7 Super Bowls, and he has nothing compared to what Lombardi had. Lombardi had one of the greatest linebackers in Ray Nitschke. You know, they had one of the greatest running back tandems in Jim Taylor and Paul Hornung. They had one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, Bart Starr. You had one of the greatest offensive lines of all time where 4 of the 5 guys are in the Hall of Fame. So, yeah, I think that proves my point, Lucas.
I believe that Bill Belichick, you're right. He has taken a lot of guys who at first, maybe weren't as good and, turn them into real stars. But Tom Brady, in my opinion, is the engine behind the New England Patriots. And you take Tom Brady away, Pats would not be the team that they are.
Lucas, the dumbest argument you can make against anything is if you take him away, because you know what? What do you think happens to Green Bay if you take Bart Starr away? And on top of that, Belichick made
But we live in a quarterback league. But we are in a quarterback-dominated league
and
now.
We weren't back
where the league has evolved. Bill, the league has evolved.
Hey. Zeke Bartkowski was a competent quarterback. Zeke could have handled that offense.
The name for Zeke Bratkowski is Bratkowski, not Bartkowski.
Okay. Well,
when you look at this, no, I'm just saying.
I'm done. You win.
No,
I'm done.
You look at the Super Bowl that the New England Patriots have won, and tell me, Tom Brady was the central piece to win those Super Bowls. He led a comeback in 2002 against the
I will disagree with you because this is
2004.
The thing. Wait a second. Hey, I know what you're going to say, and that's fine, but we're going to go to this. The 2 greatest the most unstoppable offenses that the NFL has ever produced were probably the Super Bowl 25 Buffalo Bills and the Super Bowl 36 Los Angeles Rams, or St. Louis Rams. Now, the Rams were beating everybody to death, and so were the Bills. The Bills put up 51 on the Raiders in the championship game. They put up 19 against Belichick's defense. In Super Bowl 36, he held the greatest show on turf to 17 points. So, yeah, that's complete bullshit, your argument, because if you look at what Belichick's done, His first couple Super Bowls, he won them with his defense. Then he wins a couple Super Bowls with his offense.
Oh, and look at the Super Bowl last year, Mike, where the team allows 41 points.
Yeah.
And Bill Belichick doesn't even put in Malcolm Butler.
Okay. Why would you put in Malcolm Butler? Play. Do you know the story of what Malcolm Butler did? So you're a win at all costs. Wait a second. You're going to rip him because he supposedly cheats. And this is the thing that gets me. Malcolm Butler violated team rules, all right? From people that I know with the Patriots, I know what those rules are. And the thing is this. You're going to tell me that Belichick is going to sit his best corner for no reason at all in the Super Bowl, but yet in the same sentence you're going to tell me that he cheated in other Super Bowls to win. So what is it? Is he a man that will do anything to win? Or is he a man that is the complete opposite? Because you know what?
Mike, he could have sat him for the first half.
Bullshit.
And the penalty and the punishment.
What did Malcolm Butler do? What did Malcolm Butler do?
Malcolm Butler 2 Super Bowls ago had the greatest defensive play in Super Bowl history. You and I know that. Against the Seattle Seahawks.
You do not become a great coach.
You and I know that.
Wait a second. You do not become a great coach by letting your players do whatever the hell they want. And you do not become a great coach by just because it's a big game playing somebody that doesn't deserve to play. Because when you do that, you lose the rest of your team. Malcolm Butler did things that should not have been done.
One half.
It's not good enough. No, don't give me that. Bill Belichick is a throwback coach.
So that they could have adjusted. Bill Belichick could have made adjustments in that second half to put more pressure on the Eagles' offense, on their receiver. Heck, they had a backup quarterback, Mike, and Nick Foles, a backup quarterback. Tom Brady threw for over 500 yards.
Yeah.
A record.
And why did they lose the game? They lost the game because their right guard missed the block.
And they lost the game because of their defense.
They lost the game because they missed the block.
41 points.
See, this is an absolute. I mean, this argument makes no sense. He played a Philadelphia Eagles team that was a far superior team, and he damn near beat them. The year before that, he played an Atlanta Falcons team that was far superior and beat them after being down 28-3 going into the fourth quarter.
Because of Tom Brady.
Really?
It was not Tom Brady.
Okay. So you don't think – wait a second. So you think that this 28-3 come from behind win was because of Tom Brady. So you think the fact that the Atlanta Falcons for 2.5 quarters destroyed the Patriots' defense is why Tom Brady won? Because I hate to tell you this, but that was won because of Tom Brady and because of the defense. Because if that defense
and because of the Atlanta Falcons not being smart on offense.
Go ahead. Well, this is the thing. The reason they weren't
they didn't run the ball.
Okay. If you want to just continue to talk, I'll let you.
No, you go ahead.
All right. Hey, Mike. Yeah. One thing, I just want to point out one thing is that you kind of alluded to the fact that Lombardi was fortunate enough to have his entire team with him for his entire run, 10 years. Basically, all those guys did stay, correct, and that was a tremendous advantage to him. And I agree with that entirely. If you can keep a cohesive unit together like that, they're going to continue to win. But basically, through Belichick's entire career, pretty much, he's had Brady at his side.
Yeah, he's always had.
Really, it's been about
Lombardi
really a wash
star.
Because Brady is probably worth to Belichick what all those guys, Fuzzy Thurston, Jerry Kramer, Taylor, Horning, Starr, and I don't think anybody would argue the fact that Tom Brady is a far superior quarterback than Bart Starr.
I would
Bart Starr
argue
was a great leader.
I would argue it in a heartbeat.
But I don't think statistically or ability-wise, Bart Starr was a great quarterback because he ran a great team.
Okay.
And he ran a great team. But Brady is a great quarterback on his own merits.
He's the best quarterback ever played.
But Brady is probably going to go down in history as the best quarterback ever to play the game.
That ever played because.
But my point I just want to make is that in title of them both achieving their goals and their record, and personally we're comparing apples to oranges because it's two different eras of football. But Brady means to Belichick what the Packer hardcore organization meant to Lombardi. So that kind of washes out.
Well, wait a second.
I don't think Lombardi would be as successful without his core players, and I don't think Belichick would be as successful without Brady.
So
both of them had to rely on, and they both were there.
The fact that Vince Lombardi, he did coach with the Redskins, and they did turn their team around, but they didn't make the playoffs.
Right.
Are we going to ignore the fact that Bill Belichick took Vinny Testaverde and made him a Pro Bowl quarterback and took the Browns to the playoffs, which nobody has done and won a game with since then. So the fact that we're going to sit here and say that, and you got to remember this. Bill Belichick's coached in three other Super Bowls on top of what we're counting? I mean, he was the defensive coordinator, Super Bowl 21, one of the great defenses the NFL's ever seen. Super Bowl 25
Lawrence Taylor.
With a backup. What's Lawrence Taylor get to? Okay, so this is the thing. If you're a great coach, I hate to tell you this, Lucas, but you've got great players. There's never been a great coach that didn't have great players. There's never been a great quarterback that didn't have a great head coach. I mean, if you look at the top 10 quarterbacks in history, what most people will do.
I agree. I agree.
So if you agree,
Don
Shula,
Dan Marino. Don Shula
was nowhere near a great coach.
What?
No way.
Are you? No. Oh, my goodness.
So do you believe winning championships makes you a great coach?
Wins.
He did
the man with 320. Don Shula, 328
He coached a long time.
Wins.
I don't believe Pete Rose is the greatest hitter of all time. I mean, come on.
The Miami Dolphins to an undefeated season?
Yeah. In 1972,
I don't know about that.
In 1973, he won the Super Bowl. He coached another 30 years and didn't win another one. He had one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in Dan Marino and didn't win another one. Now, he was in charge.
But do you measure a coach based on Super Bowl?
Here we go. Okay.
Bully?
This is the thing. All right. When you start talking about Lombardi, you talked about all the championships he won. When we talk about Belichick, we talk about all the championships. We're not talking about quarterbacks here. We're not talking about shooting guards in the NBA. Yes.
Well,
when it comes down to it,
Mike. I mean, it's kind of all factor in, Mike. It all factors in.
Okay.
I mean, you can't just say that Belichick is a genius or Lombardi's a genius by just on their own merit. They both had assets that your utilization, and basically what made them great coaches is what they did with their assets.
The assets
and they both did
all
great
the time
things
for
with the
Belichick.
assets that were available to them.
And the other thing you're missing is this. There's 32 teams today. There was anywhere from 12 to 16 when Lombardi coached. And on top of that, the game is completely different now.
Right. And that's why I'm saying it's a stupid argument.
And I said that.
Argument, exactly.
It started at the top.
Yeah, it's a dumb comparison because now players train year-round. They have coaches, mental coaches, physical coaches, nutritional coaches. They're the top athletes in the world. They're more physically fit.
Exactly.
Now, when Lombardi was doing it, he was taking shoe salesmen and turning them into a championship football team in the NFL.
Everybody had shoe
two different eras.
Back then.
You can't make this comparison. It's stupid.
Mike,
you might be better off arguing Walsh against Belichick. That might be a better argument because Lombardi to Belichick is dumb.
Okay.
They don't exist in the same lifetime.
Hey, we will be back tomorrow. We'll have Mr. Boynton on from the Chicago Blackhawks talk about the article he wrote and everything he did there. I want to thank Lucas for coming on. And I
is he gonna pop us?
Wait, is this the end of the show?
Is he gonna Dan Dockage us?
No, this is the point, Steve. It's not a Dan Dockage thing. It's we're doing a show about something that we agreed that we wanted to do. We invited Lucas in, and 28 minutes in, since you're losing the argument, you're saying it's a stupid argument, which means there was no reason to do this show to begin with.
We're trying to relegate it down to it's a difficult comparison, and we're trying to point out assets that Lombardi had that Belichick didn't, and Belichick had that Lombardi didn't.
But it's a stupid argument, you said.
What do you want to okay, Mike, set your parameters on how you want to measure. What do you want to use as the measures of who's greater? Set the parameters.
Doesn't matter. I think I already did. Football is a hell of a lot more difficult today. You said it yourself. When Lombardi coached, this is the thing. If you're talking about the greatest coaches of all time, to me, Lombardi's not even in my top 4. I mean, Tom Landry was a superior innovator than almost anybody. Him and Paul Brown were the guys that did more for football than just about anybody. And another guy that I would
couldn't
put up
disagree with you much there. That they're great innovators. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom Landry
Lombardi won. But Lombardi won. What is the ultimate measure
Landry
of
didn't
the
win.
success of the
Landry
coach?
went to the playoffs for 18 straight seasons.
But how many times did he win?
There you go. That was my point when we started this. Lucas, what do you got?
Well,
Mike, I'm going to say right now, of the active coaches in the NFL, I think we can all agree that Bill Belichick is the best of the active coaches. I'm going to say that right now. And I agree, both of these, Lombardi and Belichick, they are great coaches. But here's another point I want to make with Belichick and with Lombardi. And I think with Lombardi, he really trusted his players, and he stuck with the core group of guys, with the Packers, all throughout those championship runs. I'm sure you've read the report, the New England Patriots, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, Robert Kraft, of course, Belichick, rightfully so, thinking Tom Brady's at the end of his career. He wants him to go get Jimmy Garoppolo in there, because I think that a lot of people would agree that if Bill Belichick were to win a Super Bowl without Tom Brady, I think that would elevate his legacy. I think it would, because I think at the end of the day, you got someone, we all agree, Tom Brady is, in my opinion, the best quarterback to ever play. But if Belichick can coach another quarterback and lead the team to the Super Bowl, then I think he'll really validate the legacy of being one of the greatest coaches. But when you have Belichick trying to shoot Tom Brady out of the door, and Tom Brady, and then Robert Kraft says, no, you're sticking with Tom Brady. He's basically sticking it to Bill Belichick, saying, we're sticking with the best player in the league. And look what Tom Brady did this past season, 40 years old, and he's an MVP. You can't deny what Tom Brady has. He has impacted so many
I
of the
hate to tell you this,
players.
but the most
He's impacted
important part to being a successful NFL quarterback is being drafted by the right organization. If you want a perfect example, Steve Young, after going to the USFL, went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and everybody thought he was terrible. He goes to Bill Walsh, and he's a Hall of Famer. I think this case could be made in any quarterback. If you stick Dan Marino in, Seattle with Chuck Knox, he'll never develop into being what he ended up being. Tom Brady was a guy that was a sixth-round draft pick that didn't start really until his senior year in college. Nobody thought he could be this. And when he started off, his second year, he leads them, wins the Super Bowl. That was a team that won with defense and a running game. Tom Brady was developed into a great quarterback. If you look at his numbers are ordinary until you get to about season 5 or 6. And the reason he got better was because he was around Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick had a huge part of Bill Parcells winning a couple Super Bowls. And when you look at it, Bart Starr was the only quarterback that Vince Lombardi won with. And if you look at the other thing, there's very few head coaches that have won with different quarterbacks. That's why Joe Gibbs, to me, is a guy that should be in the top 5. He won with 3 different quarterbacks.
I agree. He's in my top 5.
But my thing is this. If you go innovation, I think really when you're judging the greatest coaches, I think innovation and being able to – today, the NFL is built to not have dynasties. And for 20 years almost, the Patriots have been just that, a dynasty, at a time when it's not built for that. If you look at the NFL in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, up until about 93, 94 when free agency became really huge, there was almost always a dynasty. Hell, there was multiple dynasties. In the 70s, you had the Raiders, you had the Steelers, you had the Cowboys, you had the Dolphins. I mean, come on. It was basically the same teams in the playoffs almost every year. Today, half of the teams are different in the playoffs every year. And the other fact that I have is this. Lombardi was a GM for his team, but it wasn't like being a GM now. Bill Belichick is a GM now, and he's a man that has let go of guys that people thought he shouldn't let go of. And he brings in other guys, and he turns them into great players. And I think the biggest thing that's missed here is this. Vince Lombardi doesn't have a long coaching tree of assistant coaches that did anything. All right? And when I look at Belichick, he doesn't have a long list of guys. I think that what he does is he finds coaches and he coaches his coaches. And I think that's missed, that to be a great coach, you have to be able to get a staff that will listen to you and you have to coach them. And he has done that. Now, I think Kraft is an asshole. They've won in spite of Kraft. I don't think Kraft is this great man that he's made out to be. And I think in the long run, the fact that Belichick will probably leave after this year and Brady will hang around a couple of years, but after Belichick leaves and the idiot they got there, the young kid that's going to take over for him that's failed in Denver before, I think it will elevate Belichick's legacy when he leaves, because that organization is going to be in a cesspool. And if Belichick wants to coach somewhere else and he goes somewhere else, he will be successful, because every place he's been, whether it's an assistant coach or a head coach, he's been a success. And people, when they bring up, well, he failed at Cleveland. In Cleveland, he took them to the playoffs. He won a playoff game. In '95, the Browns were one of the favorites to make it to the Super Bowl. They were sitting at 6-2 when Art Modell announced the team was going to move. When he did that, everything imploded and fell apart. But if you look at it like this, Belichick had a huge thing. I mean, if you look at Belichick, I mean, the staff that he had in Cleveland, I mean, that included guys like Nick Saban. Nick Saban may go down as the greatest college football coach of all time. And when you ask Nick Saban who he attributes that to, he attributes that to Bill Belichick. I mean, what NFL coach that worked with Vince Lombardi is even in that conversation at any level of football? So I think the big thing here is he coaches these players, he coaches these coaches. I think the cheating thing, everybody does it. If you're a football coach, you've done something you shouldn't have done before. It's just the way it is. Because those are jobs that pay you a lot of money, and you have to win to keep it.
Still doesn't make it right. Right.
Because this is the thing. You are not on here complaining about Mike Shanahan and the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos were busted and fined in 1997. You remember that great Kansas City Chiefs team with Marty Schottenheimer that lost 14-10 to Denver? All right. The story there was the offensive line was putting grease on their jerseys. And about the middle of the third quarter, they made a
talking about Bill Belichick.
You see him over there with wiping it off. And the thing is this, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, he's trying to get a competitive advantage. With the film thing and videotaping people, everybody was spying on each other. He was innovative. He took it to another level. He got film on it. Big deal. I mean, you still got to go out and block, tackle, and play. I don't think the cheating thing is anything more than people being mad because he wins all the time. People hate winners. People hate LeBron James because he wins. I mean, he's always in the finals, so we hate him.
He's 3-6.
He's always in the finals. So now we're going to make fun of a guy because he's been to 9 NBA finals and only won 3 of them. That's my point. I mean, how many guys have been to 9 NBA finals as the main player on their team and won 3 of them? Not that many. But if I bring up LeBron James has been to 9 finals, everybody goes, wait, he's only won 3. Give me a break. You got to be pretty damn good to make it to the World Championship 9 times. And how many times has he made it in a row? But yet, he gets hate. You know, all these guys, almost all legends. Muhammad Ali, during his career, was hated by half the population.
Mike, I'm not taking anything away from LeBron James' success. I'm not taking anything away from the fact that the Patriots have been the dynasty of our generation. They've made 8 conference, they've won 8 conference championships, many, conference championship appearances in a row, 5 Super Bowl wins. But my argument is that I think Vince Lombardi set the foundation for future coaches, in the league.
Paul Brown.
He did.
Paul Brown.
Heavy in the field. film is now used in game preparation.
No, that's a joke. I mean, you're going to ignore the man that taught that to Lombardi, which was Paul Brown. Nobody watched game film until Paul Brown. Nobody broke down film until Paul Brown. The most innovative coaches of all time overall was Paul Brown. Offensively, it was Sid Gilman. And
but we're comparing Lombardi and Belichick.
Huh?
Yeah, but I agree. Paul Brown was. You're absolutely right. George Halas, same. We could go. And really trace the coaches.
This is
really
the thing. George
impact.
Halas wasn't an innovative football coach. What George Halas did was he saved the NFL. I mean, George Halas, the NFL was about to become non-existent in the late 1920s, and he went and he signed Red Grange. He took him on a tour of the country for a couple months, and that's what saved the NFL. That's what gave them the money to keep running. So you can't do it without George Halas. George Halas is the father of football. After that, you got guys like Paul Brown, Sid Gilman. Bum Phillips is a guy who was one of the most innovative defensive coaches of all time, but people overlook him because he had the cowboy hat and nobody thinks he really coached. Tom Landry with his flex defense. And this is the thing. Guys today are not going to be innovative.
Noll.
Yeah, Chuck Noll. Guys today are not going to be able to – the innovations of today are taking what has already been done and doing something else with it because you can't reinvent the wheel. And football's been around for 100 years. You're not going to do something that hasn't already been done. I mean, the innovations in football where you went from the Notre Dame box to you went to the full house in the 1940s. Finally you get the shotgun offense with Tom Landry in the 70s with the Dallas Cowboys. You get the 3-4 defense with Bum Phillips. And see, you had a guy like, the 4-3 defense was pretty much dying out until Belichick brought it back a few years ago. And the reason he did that is because he didn't have enough linebackers. I'm just saying this. With Belichick, I see a guy that no matter what his roster is, he'll figure out a way to beat you.
Look,
and it doesn't matter if you're better or not.
I can't deny what Bill's done. For me with Bill, I had a big problem with how he managed that Super Bowl 52. Give credit to Philly. They were a superior football team. But for someone
have you ever watched the 1960 NFL championship game between Green Bay and Philadelphia?
I have not. I will now, though.
Well, watch the game because Lombardi got outcoached. I mean, it happens when you coach in a lot of games.
Like,
the thing is this.
No, of course
this is the thing. You give Tom Brady
9-1,
all the credit.
Though, in playoffs. Lombardi, 9-1 in the playoffs.
No, because there was only 12 teams. If you won the division, you were in the championship. I mean, that was it.
Speaks to then a further point that I think these coaches were both great in their respective eras. I mean, the game has changed so much.
The game is much more specialized. You need to know a lot more to be a football coach now than you did then. Vince Lombardi was a great motivator of men. All right. Now, Belichick, undoubtedly, Belichick has to be too because you can't win that much. Now, they motivate different ways, I think. I think Belichick is more like for Riz, Bob Knight. You want to do what you're supposed to do because he might get rid of your ass if you don't. With Vince Lombardi, you had a little bit of that too, but I mean,
it was the real pregame speech. It was the real
and this
move
is the thing.
Cinema.
And the thing is this: a pregame speech doesn't really mean anything. I think he motivated people. I think he motivated people through fear, like Belichick, also actually, because when people are afraid to lose their jobs. But I've given some awesome speeches before games or at halftime. Ain't nobody remember that speech after a play or two into the first half or the second half. Nobody remembers that I'm supposed to go out there and win this for the Gipper because somebody just busted me in the head, and I'm just trying to stay alive and make a play on the next game. So the thing is this: Vince Lombardi's teams executed perfectly. Bill Belichick's teams executed perfectly. The difference between the two to me is the fact that I think the game is much more difficult to coach today than it was back then because If you look at the 12 coaches in the NFL in 1963, I'm betting you probably couldn't name 3 or 4 of them. And if you look back at 1973 or 1983, you could probably name me 10, 12 coaches off the top of your head. So I think it's a lot easier when you're the innovator because everybody's trying to catch up with you. I think when you're Bill Belichick and everybody's on an even playing field starting out, your ability to be innovative with stuff that's already there and beat other people, I think that is the difference. That's why I think that Belichick is slightly better than Lombardi.
Look, for me, they're both great coaches in their right mind. Again, 2 different eras. I just think that Lombardi, at a time when, football was, on the precipice of really, exploding in terms of being, a sports, a popular sports league. Green Bay was a blue-collar town. And Vince Lombardi, as a coach, as I said earlier, took guys who weren't football players. They were, as I said earlier, selling insurance.
Every team was like that. Every team was like that, though.
But you have to really appreciate that. You have to appreciate that he was able to do that and have success.
Yeah, but remember this also. They also had 6 preseason games and spent 2 months in training camp.
Okay, Mike, but
so they probably spent more time football-wise than guys do today. Because most guys today, they're out drinking and getting busted for grabbing girls' crotches.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely practiced, but they needed to practice because if they didn't, they wouldn't have been as successful. And I think Vince Lombardi changed the culture of a losing team, 1-10-1, and then made mediocrity unacceptable, and then brought the winning mantra into Green Bay. Why it's called Title Town today.
New England had never won a Super Bowl till Belichick was there. Green Bay had one
Correct.
Before. Green Bay had won multiple before Lombardi got there.
I just think, for me, on a more, social level, we can agree to disagree about, the film and, when the film was introduced. Sure, there were coaches that used film, and Lombardi just really accelerated that. But look, he integrated different races onto the team. Of course, Belichick does that now. That's so important when, 70% of the league is African American. And, Lombardi, at a time when there were real racial tensions in America, Lombardi was able to accept people based on their football talent and make them into champions. My problem with Bill Belichick, I admire Bill. I have a lot of respect for Bill. I just think that, Tom Brady has, they have worked, in tandem, I would say. And Tom, I think, large part of those, big wins was a result of, fourth quarter comeback by Tom Brady.
The first half were a result of defense. The first half of those championships were defense.
But the defense, as in the last few years, I'll agree with this. The defense was a big part in those, in the first 3 Super Bowls, 02, 04, 05.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but Belichick pretty much handles the game plan on offense too. So.
No, I get that.
Hey, but real quick, we got to wrap this up either way because I got to pick my son up from school. So this ain't like the time I was teasing Steve like 28 minutes in. All right, guys, we're going to be back tomorrow.
Steve here?
Yeah, Steve's here. We're going to be back tomorrow with Survive Advance with myself, Steve, Neil Boynton from the Chicago Blackhawks, former NHL player. But we do have to wrap this up. We appreciate everybody that listens. So for Lukas Weese, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.